I'm a practicing psychotherapist living in the Villages, Florida at present. And I am welcoming everyone. Good morning and pre-Halloween wishes to all of you joining me today. In July of 2020, I left my home, my family, my friends, and my partner of 30 years to begin a new life. It was COVID, and the world was changing around me, and coping was both a challenge and quite a necessity. Babe, my dog, and we made the 12-hour trip together. And of course, we talked about it at length. We made some decisions about where to stop and what to eat. The consensus for rest stops turned out to be Cracker Barrel, of all places. And the food would be everything that could be packed into the car. Well, I ran through the Cracker Barrels in my Northeast mask, and I imagined all the germs flying around me as I remembered all the crazy videos since COVID that I had seen. And these videos on carefully handling food being delivered to my house and how to handle social distancing in the grocery line. We were on our way and we were already plotting the coping. The world was changing and I was changing too. You know, sometimes being a therapist is not quite the ultimate answer. Sometimes we are as anybody else, and we are dealing with the challenges in much the same way. So I'd like to talk today about how the world has been changing or changed, and maybe even our future a little bit. Clearly, this is my take on the changes, along with my clients during the last few years. And we have all agreed that it would be difficult or almost impossible to separate COVID and the vaccination stressors in our lives from the political trauma that's we've all encountered in our country and as individuals. And those stressors in our political lives, no matter which side you stand on, have led to the same grief and the loss as COVID has presented. Families and friends and lovers have been separated like never before. And the angst of emotions have been like never seen before. And all this on top of our usual challenges in our personal life and the losses, including some of our loved ones who we have lost during COVID. For some, there has been great despair that has been unending, really, without relief. And for others, including myself and many of my clients, we have worked steadily with the challenges and ways to not only maintain, but to have joy, quality, and meanings in our lives. So here are just some of the ways that we have explored and learned together to adjust and get through this. Number one, you have choices in how you run your life. The world affects you, but it doesn't need to run you. During the most difficult time and period of isolation in COVID, my clients and I learned to create our own agendas. These agendas were done in advance, 1 week, in writing on a calendar, and they stressed an entire day with 30-minute increments to closely remember the usual days that we remembered. We called it the new normal. It included consistent times for everything we were going to do during that day, and we were doing it a week in advance. So things like just the time that we got up in the morning, when we were planning to go to sleep, was listed on this calendar. We planned things like when we would do exercise, whether it would be inside or out, whether we would be using machines or walking. We did meal planning, figuring out exactly what we were going to make for the meals, ordering the meals, figuring out who was going to make it. We talked about times and figuring out which hobbies we really liked and what we wanted to do. We figured out what time of the day we were going to read our books, when we were doing home projects like reorganizing. We figured out, either for ourselves or with our partners, when we would have the movie time at night on Netflix. And we researched even what movie we were going to watch. That was part of our organization for the week. And in addition to that, we figured out phone time and Zoom time, FaceTime, because we all felt it was so important to keep in touch with our friends and our family and our children and our grandchildren, whoever that was. That was a big part of the day. Most importantly, it was not haphazard. We didn't wake up in the morning and say, what am I going to do today? And figure out we were just going to stay in bed for the day, because that's what usually happens. But we put it in writing. And those of us who did it, and this is what my clients reported, they said, if I took this route, my mood was more stable and my communication was improved with everyone around me. Same for me. Number 2, bad days are just that. We have bad days. So I might tell you the opposite of what you've heard about getting moving. I'm going to tell you to give yourself a gift and to give into it. I mean, take a day off, stay in bed, watch TV, turn off the phone. If you want to cry, please do it. It's a great source of relief. Feel sorry for yourself. If you want to call somebody and tell them how sorry you feel or how it feels that day, you've got the whole day. Just remember, it's one day. And at the end of that day, you got to get up and move on. You'll feel better. Remember this: happiness, it's a word I hear all the time, because people say to me, I ask them about their goals and they say they want to be happy. And I'm going to tell you, happiness is not true. It's really a momentary time in our life. It's like buying a new car. It feels good for a while, but it doesn't last. Then we need something else after that to fill the void. So meanings, and that's a substitute word that I'm going to use for happiness, is often created not by things that we have acquired, but by what we can do when we get out of our own systems, our own minds, our own spirits, and we start even doing for others. It's not the total way for meanings / happiness, but it's a start. And it's something for all of us to consider. Number 3, how bad has COVID left us? Well, do you remember the lines waiting all night for vaccinations for those of us who are getting it? Or do you remember, for those of us who don't want the vaccination or agree, how we talked about staying away from the people who had vaccinations who would be dangerous to us? Do you remember the 5 different computers maybe you had in front of you to try to get a spot for the vaccination shot? And this is what I'm taking with me with the memory that came as this went along. Because now we're stuck with something else, and it will be in our future. How will all of these mental health issues that we've acquired, how will it make a difference in our future, especially for our children and our grandchildren? As adults, we've had time to gather our thoughts, our spirits, and our minds to prepare for some time that was so devastating. Our children have not. Their whole life is being around their friends and school and getting together. And we don't know how this is going to affect them in the future. And for those of us who have had COVID, some of us have had what we call ourselves as to be as long haulers. Those of us who have gotten through the COVID, who have survived, but carry with us something that just won't go away. The problem is that it's new. And even the experts don't know what to do with it. Some of the long haulers have described to me being able to not focus anymore in their jobs, to be with anxiety all day long, to feel out of their bodies, to not know what to do, to never feel like they'll be the same again. What do we do with this? And there's still so much that we don't know. And there's so many people giving us their points of views, and there are such different ones. Number 4, what the hell is going on out there? As we try to deal with our frustration and our anxiety, here's just a partial list of what I've heard of what's been happening. This is what goes in my mind. January 6th, Black Lives Matter, Blue Lives Matter, Afghanistan, abortion, voting, who won the election, big business, progressives, healthcare, loss of lives with COVID, masks versus no masks, vaccinations or no vaccinations, free speech versus responsibility of speech, difficulties with travel, empty food shelves, QAnon, can't get people to work, jobs not being filled, and guns and shootings. Wow, and that's just a partial list. So here's what I have to say about that. News and media are good until they aren't. We're all used to maybe turning on the TV at a particular time of day and, kind of relaxing and listening to what's going on. Well, it's not so relaxing anymore. So I'm saying to you, as part of your coping, don't over-engage in news and media. You might need to change that. The interesting thing about news and media for all of us is that we tend to validate the point of view that we hold by watching most of the same media, which validates our feelings. Some of us, or some people have told me they like to surf and watch different points of view, but then they always come back to telling me that they return to the point of view that they always had. And that often they end up being very unsettled, especially as they try to go to bed at night. Number 5, differences are not always a bad thing. I am stunned by the divisions we have created in our country and personal lives. I'm suggesting that you get to know people that you consider to be different than you. You might actually like them. You may even love them. That's what I've learned. Listening to differences, meaning not what you happen to believe or carried around most of your life, can be a good resource for your soul. Listening is a special thing that we do. Listening is not just pretending that you're hearing and you're quiet when another person is talking, telling you about their views. It's not getting ready to come out as soon as they stop with your own agenda, but really stepping back and listening and giving them a chance. It really adds to who you are as you're a person, especially at this time. 6, there are gifts in isolation. For myself, I had a lot of time to think about my future, my relationships, my works, and my values. People told me even simple things. My knitting improved. My gifts were appreciated. I couldn't visit my family, but they were on my Zoom communication each day. I helped with homework with my grandchildren. I made regular calls with my friends to check in and listen and to make sure they were okay. 7, live fully today, be present. Here's a personal note. This past Sunday evening, I was getting out of my car at a shopping center. I was walking a brief way on a crosswalk just to join family for dinner. And the next thing I knew was this huge impact. I was thrown to the ground. I had been hit by a golf cart and I was in a lot of pain. It was shocking to my system. And even still today, although I have no broken bones, it has changed me. And it was a reminder about what I've got today standing in front of me, just like going back to that agenda that I didn't let go, that I prepared, that made my life work every day. So what's our future? Where are we? Well, we're overwhelmed, we're frustrated, we're confused. There's so many messages out there. Vaxxers, non-vaxxers, Trump, Biden, libertarian. Try to remember, they're real important, what's going on out there, but it's not your whole life. We all have differences in how we view systems going on around us, how we view our personal safety. But there are changes in our future that have come about. Some of them are actually pretty good. So I want to remind you of some of them. We're learning how to work from home. Remember how, well, we thought maybe we could do some of this? Suddenly we couldn't even go to work. And suddenly businesses who thought, oh, it would never work, had to make it work. And it's worked. And now all of a sudden, we're considering a new world where maybe we're sharing office space a few times a week. Sometimes we're going to be at home doing that work. And companies, large companies are saying, oh, we're making more money this way. We don't need to rent the office space. And for people at home, maybe I'm more with my children. Maybe it just works a lot better. There's a war on, as people tell me, with these whole theories of vaccinations, non-vaccination, what it means, whether media is distorting, whether media is telling the truth, whether we should be joyful about these things that have been discovered and given to us, or whether we should be hesitant. And from what people tell me, there are two very different sides about this. And I really don't know the answer. I can only ask you to listen closely and make up your own mind about what you think is right and just move on. I don't know what's going to happen with politics in the future. Everyone seems to be complaining that I hear these days. But I want to point out to you something that's new that I thought was encouraging. It was something I read about a future, you ready for this, 7-party system. That system, which I read more about, kind of would take us more into just one side or another. It kind of evaluated our thoughts and actually brought us a little bit closer together and made it easier to move around in this system. And that's what I think maybe in the future we'll have. And maybe that'll help us to get it right sometime. Maybe not in our lifetime, but maybe sometime soon. I don't know what's going to happen with mental health because a lot of us have suffered in so many ways with loss and with grieving. And there's no way to grieve, right? Remember, you have a lot to say about your life and your future. Grief and loss are constant in our lives. It gets worse as we get older. There's no clear way to recovery because we're all different. But we all need to grieve the personal losses that have changed our lives. And it is grieving that honors the important relationships in our lives and then allows us to begin living again. Not forgetting, but living. My best to all of you in your journeys. I hope for those of us who live in the villages that you find a way to dress up in that Halloween costume this weekend and dance yourself into oblivion at the squares. And please enjoy your Thanksgiving with your friends, families, whoever. Find a place to sit and see it as a new beginning, symbolizing hope. Thank you very much.
Wow, that was very inspiring. It was poignant, insightful. I think we're all in all different stages. Looking back through the pandemic, who has done the best through COVID and through this pandemic? What sorts of people have done their best through this, and what coping skills do they have?
I think in going back to what I said, that trying to live with the time that we've gone through in a kind of haphazard way, trying to just get up, figure it out, rather than planning what you can do during this time, each part of the day makes a huge difference. You know, most of us just kind of wake up and don't know what to do with it, or I'll figure out what to do with the time. Maybe I'll straighten that shelf, maybe I'll take a walk. And it just kind of gets to us. We make a call to try to reach someone. We may reach them. We begin to feel grief and loss. Some of us have been very ill. We don't know how to grab onto those support systems. But when you plan it, when you make it your agenda, when you say, I'm going to take life and I'm going to make it work for me, life is not going to take me to a place I don't want to be. It's not 100%, but it works. I can tell you it's worked for me and many of the people that I've worked with. It's something to remember for now and our future.
So you're saying that structure and consistency and knowing what your plan is day by day helps to make you feel like you have control of your day and your destiny and your week and your month, because you know what's coming, you've planned what's coming. It gives you a sense of control.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
That turned out to be the key for myself and many people I worked with. Remember, this is not the only way. This is a way that has worked for many.